We got them. They released a little bit too much information, and now we got them. The story about what happened in Nashville is total bunk. It's my belief that on Christmas Day, President Trump stopped a nuclear attack. I know that is a huge statement, but stay with me. This story about the RV, what the RV was for, this woman, Michelle Swing, the profile of this guy, none of it made any sense. And now they have released some information that shows this wasn't what they're saying it is. We have to start here. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. Now, let's unpack this statement real quick from the bomber to his neighbor. You see, they didn't have to release this. They made mistakes like this with the Fitzgerald investigation back in 2017. They said things they didn't need to say. Neighbor of alleged Nashville bomber recalls last conversation, quote, Nashville and the world will never forget me. You see, this speaks so much to the mindset of the man. He was an incredible narcissist. Nashville and the world will never forget me. This tells me that this guy didn't care about other people. He would not have cared about saving lives. And what that tells me is that the warning wasn't coming from the RV. People said they, of course, they heard the warning, and there was, of course, the video of the warning playing, but inside that tiny little street right there with those tall buildings, the way sound echoes, you probably couldn't have determined where that sound was actually coming from. And I stand by this statement. In the context of suicide bombers, suicide is a coward's way out. And that's kind of a hallmark of narcissists as well. They are inherently cowards. It's who they are. It's a trait of those with very, very low self-esteem. It's one of their ways of combating that feeling they have inside that they can't deal with. Now, let me show you something about the explosion location. And there's something in that picture we're going to cover as well. Now, this building right here that I'm showing, see if I can move this out of the way a little bit. There we go. Two giant towers on top of it. Now, you see this little street down here surrounded by these big, tall buildings? You see how it's like all shaded? See if I can tilt the camera down a little bit. You see, people have this idea, it's like, well, he really didn't want to hurt anybody. He just wanted to cause damage. Baloney. Baloney. The world would not have forgotten, quote unquote, some major explosion that destroyed an entire city, but they will forget this minor event. You see, that's key. This guy didn't intend on just damaging this building. This guy didn't intend on just damaging this building. You don't say the world is never going to forget me if all you're going to do is do some easily repaired surface damage. Now, yeah, the internet was knocked out for a while, but this guy didn't care about saving human lives. There are two occupied buildings, apartment buildings across the street. If he really wanted to just damage this building and guarantee he didn't harm anyone, why didn't he just park over here? On the back side of it, this whole lot would have been empty on Christmas. He could have just parked in here, got right up close to the building, and then pressed the button. Why would he not have just easy peasy? In fact, let me show you this at street level. Keep zooming in here and it automatically zooms down. Okay. So here's the building. Here's that back parking lot right here. Now all these cars would have all been gone. There might have been a few. But if your idea was just to take out AT&T, just take out the building, and you didn't want to harm anyone, it's real simple. Just drive back here and kaboom. Why would he have parked out here Let's go around the corner here. This is Google Street View. This is where he parked down here. And you see how there's this big gap? If you're really going to try why would you do that? You could park right next to the building or 10 feet away and actually closer to occupied buildings. I don't believe for 1 minute that that audio recording was him, that he was responsible for that audio recording. I honestly believe that they took this weapon out with a satellite laser, that there were precursor explosives that were in the RV that were set to detonate a much, much larger explosion that would have taken out Nashville. Now, also, in this picture, you can see some things that are very curious. Let's see if we can zoom in just a little bit. The driver, that's about as close as I can get. Let me see if I can maybe zoom the actual camera here. There we go. The driver is wearing a mask. You can see it right here. Now, why would a suicide bomber be wearing a mask? Also, you can see a reflection in the windshield right here. This is the AT&T building, and it looks like this guy's pointing to something as he's driving by. This is what I really think is the case. And now that we know that there was a transfer of $400,000 worth of homes to a 29-year-old AEG executive, little female Michelle Swing, that's clearly payment for the explosive. That's clearly some type of payment. Now, those documents, we don't know that he did this. You see, in Tennessee, you can quit claim anything. So we don't even know that he necessarily did that. They can forge signatures. That's a very common thing with alphabet agencies. See, everything we're being told that we believe to be fact was all nice and tidy and ready to go right after this. It reminds me of the passport they found after 9/11 in the rubble, like within a day. 10 square blocks of giant carnage, and they found this nice, pristine passport that all of a sudden they've got this guy's DNA. No way. Not buying it. Not buying it. Doesn't fit the profile. Doesn't fit the profile at all. And I know this is a crazy thing, but honest to God, we've seen the video. You can look at my other videos. There was something that came out of the atmosphere and ignited that RV and took out that RV. This was supposed to have been a much, much larger attack. Who he was involved with, whether it was even him, that he's just a patsy, makes perfect sense, because you have this guy that they want to, broad brush here, as the quote-unquote lone wolf, like they did Paddock in Vegas. It's almost the exact same scenario. You have the 60-something-year-old disgruntled, and they've been talking about this for a long time, about how this group of people, white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, Christian men in America, are the number one threat to America, supposedly. And, who could have been responsible for this? Well, who remembers the Tet Offensive? Who remembers the enemy that took advantage of a ceasefire during a holiday in 1968? That might give you a hint as to who might be behind this. Because we're going to unpack this one more time, and I want you guys to think about this critically. The man said, Nashville and the world will never forget me. Now, wait a minute. Hold on. Does this sound like somebody who cares about loss of human life? Does this sound like somebody who cares about others? If he was really trying to destroy this building, let me see if I can get out of street view here. There we go. If he was really trying to destroy this building or bring this building down, there's no way he could have known if there were maids or some type of service personnel in the building doing some type of maintenance work, even on Christmas. There's no audio warning that would have prevented that. And an explosion that big would have clearly damaged these residential apartment buildings across the street above these businesses. There's no way his audio warning would have guaranteed that. He wasn't trying to save lives. He wasn't trying to save lives. This is my allegation. For those of you who are scratching your heads, what's your overall allegation? They knew this was coming. They didn't know how they could stop it. They didn't know if they stopped the RV, if the guy would just light it off there. So they waited for the thing to stop. They waited for the thing to stop. They tried to get as many people out of the region as they could, because they knew when they lit this thing up with the infrared laser and burned down the part of the bomb that was responsible for making it work. It's kind of a complicated thing to explain. It's one of the tactics our Navy uses when we had the lasers aboard the ships at sea that were burning down all of the Korean missiles, North Korean missiles. What you do is you use the laser to destroy the early stage part, the guidance part, the part that's responsible for the detonator. And I really think they thought if they could get the satellite in place and they could use one of these high-powered infrared lasers. You see, nobody would see an infrared laser. And they could burn a hole through this thing, and they could set off the pre-ignition stage of this. It wasn't a guarantee for sure. It was not a guarantee for sure. There would be an explosion, but it wouldn't be the catastrophic one. You see that $400,000? Guarantee that had something to do with some type of fissile material. That's what this was really about. This guy had supposedly no social media profile of any kind. I mean, seriously, think about that. Who has, these days, no social media? And he wasn't hiding out in the middle of nowhere. He was in Antioch, Tennessee. Do you know the technical expertise it takes to build a bomb that could survive a trip from Antioch to Nashville? See, here's Antioch up here. There are organizations around the world that would love to have talked to this guy about his techniques to get on the highway and come driving down here with that kind of a bomb. I mean, that took some serious... He didn't have that training. The guy was an IT guy. That's why this all falls apart. This all falls apart. And like I said, we'll look at this again. That warning. I'm sure people are like, well, wait, but they played the warning. They played the warning. Okay, you see how these buildings are really tall? You could be playing something anywhere in here, even out a window. And the way it would bounce around, the sound, the echoes, you wouldn't know where it's coming from. There's no way you would know where it's coming from. Especially, afterward. After something like this happens, people are usually very, very inaccurate sometimes. And the last thing I'll leave with is one of the most crazy coincidences I have ever seen in my life. Let me see if I can find the picture. One of the officers that was responding was a woman named, on the left, Amanda Topping. Topping. The most popular character from Stargate and many other series is an actress named Amanda Tapping. She was in all of the Stargate franchises. There were actually different episodes where she dealt with defusing bombs. It's Really weird. It's just really, really weird. So, anyway, 15 minutes. I will leave it there, but there's no way this guy said that the world, and I'll leave this with one more time. This is so important. Nashville and the world will never forget me. Who says that? I'll tell you who says that. Narcissists say stuff like that. And narcissists don't care about saving human lives. Period. That completely destroys the narrative of this guy, of this story out of Nashville. And I'll leave it there. Like, share, subscribe.